Up next, Take2 Reviews, starring Jake Pyre and Paul Malone. Welcome to a review show of the Take2 variety. I'm Jake Pyre.
And I'm Paul Malone. We just watched Reservoir Dogs.
Interesting take. Interesting take on a heist movie. I like this one.
Me too. Me too. You don't see a lot of heist movies where you don't see hardly any of the heist.
Right. The way that they edited this was really cool. How it shows some parts and then cuts to backstories and then cuts back to them in the warehouse at the after.
Yeah.
Stuff.
Tarantino, he's fond of using just those simple title cue cards.
Right.
Which is such an old thing. Most people kind of hate that, but it's a classic thing that he keeps alive, and I dig it.
He really likes the violence, the gun violence a lot.
Oh yeah, it wouldn't be Tarantino without just rampant bloody murder.
I heard that the whole torture scene with stuck here in the middle with you. Yeah, that whole scene. The reason why that soundtrack was actually there is because they thought the torture scene was going to be too dark without it, so they wanted to add music.
Let's just make it a little lighter.
Yeah, and so I thought that was well done.
I really enjoyed the dialogue in this film in that, these guys felt like they were criminals speaking what criminals are used to speaking amongst criminals.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you got the undercover cop who's just kind of trying to blend in.
Yeah.
Yeah, watching this again, you kind of see some stuff that's that's
gonna come into play later.
Yes, that's an important part. Interesting.
Yeah, we had a couple of Chekhov's guns.
If you love Quentin Tarantino, this is a great movie for you. It's exactly what you expect from him. Even makes a cameo. Great cast too, by the way. You could tell he gets his inspiration from a bunch of different movies.
Yeah. He's a guy with a large repertoire of movies that he's seen and processed.
Yeah.
This is a piece of classic cinema that's just keeping it fresh in its own time, and it's given us a lot to work with in what we're making today.
No.
So, I think this is worth watching, just for what it's done. We're
gonna give it a rate here in a sec, but if you haven't seen this movie before, I definitely would recommend you watch this classic. Very, very in depth. I'll say that, very in depth.
Reservoir Dogs. Woof. Stuck in the middle with you.
So we just slept on Reservoir Dogs, and now you're stuck in the middle with us.
Yeah.
So we're just going to dive into this now, starting with screenplay.
In terms of what happened, also really, really interestingly presented.
You learn a bit, and it cuts back, so you learn about another character.
Yes, we're learning about.
It cuts back to the forward where they're in the after heist area where they're interrogating each other, and then it cuts back to one of the other backstories. And then it goes forward, back, until you get the whole picture of it, and then it ends with
kind of like this whole before story and this whole after story with just a big gap sucked out of the middle.
But they did so well, though.
It blends together. It ties together very seamlessly.
The way you learn these characters and the way they presented, how you learn them, they did that very well.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's certain characters that stand out from a scene, and then it'll cut back to them. Their whole backstory, and
right.
Okay, well that's cool, and now we're going to learn more about this character that, was important in that scene, so.
Yeah, and, we even learn little things as we go into the back that then have relevance after. A couple Chekhov's guns throughout that, which, that's always thoughtful.
The characters are really well written, too, for this one.
Yes.
They had great backstories of basically just figuring out who did it.
Mm-hmm.
Who did this one.
And they were all very distinct.
Very, very good dialogue, but that's Quentin Tarantino for you, so.
Yeah.
King of dialogue, he is. So I'm going to give this one a 9.
I'm with you on the 9.
No.
The acting, then.
Great cast. No Samuel Jackson this one, though.
Nope.
So that was just kind of a surprise.
Maybe he was in the heist and we just didn't see him because they cut that out. he was the guard.
Yeah, there you
go.
Very, very smart picks with all the casting too. They all, I think, if you were to switch any of the other characters up, it wouldn't feel right. So the way that they casted this was really well done.
You couldn't have
the faces to the people's personalities worked very well.
Yeah.
So
You couldn't have Steve Buscemi playing Mr. Orange
or Mr. White.
Yeah, you couldn't have
It wouldn't work.
The greatest emotion and drama and like of this movie comes from like him being shot and Mr. White trying to get everything recomposed.
Yeah, basically. That's basically the whole movie.
We start the movie with them in the car, you know, and I think we're kind of with them too more than anybody else to the end.
Well, yeah, because they have more of a better bond than the other guys do with each other because they told each other their names and everything. And
Harvey Keitel, he keeps like wanting to keep his hair combed.
you could, yeah. One thing I will say in the scene where like they're all kind of back at the one warehouse and nice guy Eddie comes in. He actually leaves the door open, which I'm assuming is supposed to be closed because then Harvey Keitel like walks over and closes it real quick. But that was kind of I could kind of tell that was improv because it seemed like it. But the way that like they naturally moved over and continued the conversation and worked that in was very well done. Very well done. It's just subtle things like that that makes acting really good. I'd say 9 as well. They all did solid jobs.
Good choices amongst them all. I give acting a 9 for this one as well.
Score and soundtrack. This had a great soundtrack. We just gave you a taste of that.
They're catchy tunes.
Yep, all from 70s and 80s.
Somebody was concerned that the torture scene was going to be too extreme and too dark and heavy, so they wanted to lighten up the mood with this kind of lighter, boppy song.
Wes Craven, the dude who does all like the horror movies, he actually walked out of that scene because he thought it was too disturbing, even with the music. He just doesn't like to see people get tortured, so it's like, what would it have been like without the music?
Even like the title sequence when they're all like walking in slow-mo, you got like this cool jiving beat coming along.
As they're introducing each one of them and the actor who played it.
Yeah,
so I'd give this one an 8.
That's what I was thinking as well.
8. Yeah.
It's up there, man.
Yeah.
Feels good.
Sound editing. The way that they transition from playing the music like within the scene and it cuts to someone in like driving and that song now is in the radio so you can hear in the background of whatever they're doing.
Yeah.
That's cool sound.
Then we cut back to the other scene and it's just louder, non-diegetic sound just in the background of the scene.
Right.
Happening.
Right. That was cool. Cool little.
So like we can intercut these moments while still staying sort of in the moment with the music and the scene. That's great.
But yeah, I'd give this like a 6.
I'm gonna say 7 on that one because I don't see enough of that non-diegetic sound thing, and I want to praise it.
All right.
More of that, please.
Art and design, another period piece, so they didn't really have to do a lot.
They got the suits.
I did like the suits. That made them really.
It's a simple thing, and they're all uniform. They're all pretty much the same suit.
Brings out that whole like professionalism within this heist
and
that
this
they're supposed
anonymity.
to have. Yeah. Thought that was really.
But then you have Joe and Eddie, who are very clearly not those guys. They seem to be more authoritative, more relaxed. They don't have to dress up. They're running the thing.
Right. They're not part of the heist, so they don't need to wear disguises.
Yeah.
So
I liked the warehouse set. I mean, I really did.
That was actually a mortuary.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It was a mortuary that they used in the movie as a warehouse?
Yep. Cool. That's why you had that little like sliding ramp and everything. And there's actually in some scenes you can see like like the cleaning supplies that they would use for that kind of stuff. So.
Wow.
Another fun fact for you there. They did a pretty good job with art and design. I'm gonna have to give this one a 7.
The cars also.
The cars, yes.
I'm gonna say 7 because of those cars.
Some cool cars.
And they're jacked up pretty good.
Yes. Yeah.
Cinematography.
I like the one scene where you see Steve Buscemi running down the things like, get out of the way! Following him along the whole thing. And that was funny.
So I remember there was a split diopter shot where like on the right half we have I think Harvey Keitel. And he's like in focus, and then in the left half it's like Tim Roth down there all jacked up and bleeding on the floor, and he's in focus.
Yeah.
I don't know, there was a couple of shots like that.
One of the backgrounds, I think it was Mr. Blonde, where the dude calls him into his office. You pointed that out to me. Yeah. It like switches the focus from like the office to the dude.
Yeah, just a rack focus up to him, and then back into the office to Joe, and then we push in and it follows them in. That was like it's just a rack focus and a push in, but it was really smooth, man. It felt good.
One thing too in the beginning, that whole like revolving table shot, that was really cool. It was like a poker table. I'll give this an 8.
I'm gonna say 9. It's not perfect, but
it's pretty good.
It was
pretty good.
And of course, age. It's an older movie, and if they had today's technology, it would have been even better.
Yes.
But for what they were shooting with then.
It holds up, man. It holds up.
Yes.
But that's Quentin Tarantino, of course, too. He's got that director's shot, so he knows what he's looking for.
Very well composed.
Special effects. The blood, a lot of blood in this one.
A lot of blood.
A lot of blood. It was just spilling out Tim Roth, and you see the puddle.
Mm-hmm.
There's actually another fun fact for you. While they're recording that, it was mid-June, July-ish, so it was super hot in that warehouse area. So
I believe it. They're all sweating.
Tim Roth said that it was so hot that he was actually, the pool of blood was keeping him stuck to the floor, so he had to keep, like, getting off of it and, like, keeping it moist and whatnot, or else it'll dry up. And yeah, he said that was not a fun time for him.
The prosthetic ear.
Yeah.
And, like, his just jacked up effects. His eye was cut. I don't even know how they did that, but good job. I'm
going to give this a 6.
I will agree. I'm also on the 6.
Film editing. I already mentioned the radio, how it transitions from, the whole warehouse into now the radio, and they're still speaking over it.
Yeah.
Good job.
Quentin Tarantino's almost signature use of title cards.
Yes, Mr. White, Mr. Blonde.
I don't know anybody else in Hollywood that is still regularly using that, because most people think it's outdated.
Well, people use it, but I don't think they use it in a right context. As in Quentin Tarantino, it's like a little bit of his, specialty. So it's like he does it very well. So
it works into his writing. Like it's part of the structure of his writing.
Right.
It's part of like the style of his directing, and it's part of how it's all edited too.
Right.
We don't have to see a story chronologically to get it, and it's more dramatically hitting if you get certain things at certain places as opposed to just watching it straight through naturally.
Yeah, and then it makes it more fun when you go see it again, so you can pick up all the other stuff that was in the beginning that they didn't mention till like later in the end. So
I'm gonna say 8.
I was gonna say 8 as well.
Yeah, we're on that.
Overall picture. Man, I always enjoy this movie. So, and honestly, I'm not seeing a lot of low numbers here.
We knew going into this that it's a good movie.
Right, it's a classic.
I might say 16.
I think I'll go with an 18 on this one, because like it's one of those movies that I'm always entertained, and that's a hard thing to capture when you see movies time and time again. So we're gonna go ahead and add these up real quick.
Having totaled our scores for Reservoir Dogs, I arrive at 79 out of 100.
And I also came to 79 out of 100, so that leaves this with 79 out of 100.
That's the total for this one. It's the first time that we've matched perfectly on our
right
on our scores.
Just a little bit below Interstellar, but it holds up, man.
So would you see this again, Jake? Would you watch this a second time?
Yeah. I've already seen this movie so many times.
Like, shoot, I want to go watch it right now.
Right, hey, man, I'll watch for that soundtrack, just that alone.
Day after, we're still totally into this movie.
Right.
Well, that's all we've got for you tonight. Join us next weekend for more Take-2 reviews. And to bring us out of this one, here's your quote. With great power comes great responsibility.
So join us next week with our next review that's coming out next weekend. So we'll see you then.
So join us next weekend where we... Fuck. God damn it. Join us next week where... Join us next review. Join us next weekend for our next review. Yes. Join us next weekend for our latest... For next installment of Take2 reviews. I always say next twice, so like... Join us next weekend where we... Join us next weekend where we... For more Take2 reviews. For more Take2 reviews.
Got the lime and the coconut. Shake it all up.
Alright, sweet.
I guess that was probably about 23 minutes. Fuck!